Hi guys, welcome to the Law of One Material Book 3, and we're on part 5. And I'm not going to do too long of an intro because I'm going to squeeze 3 sessions into this video, and I'll do deep dives later on the topics because I really want to get heavily into the population that's on Earth right now and why the population got so big right before the awakening, and who's really here right now, and where what other star systems did a lot of people come from, and who's like a native earthling right now. But that's like a really long topic, but they did touch on it at the very beginning of this next session, and I wanted them to stay on it more, but we'll get into more of that later. Anyway, they did talk also when we're talking about the pyramids here as they wrap it up. They do mention that the Atlanteans had pyramids as well, and we're starting to understand how powerful crystal energy is in these pyramids. And there's like the Bermuda Triangle. Parts of the Bermuda Triangle were parts of where the Atlanteans' establishments were, but they're obviously underwater, but they're also, you have to remember, under about a mile to half a mile of sediment. It's not like you can just scratch away a little bit of sand and find something. It is buried really deep. But some of these are still activated. Some of the pyramids are activated, and their crystal energy source is activated. And if the conditions are just right, it can affect us. So that's why, the anomalies happen there with compasses and, the primitive, technology that we had before. You would lose a lot of planes and a lot of, boats and things like that. And it's kind of like, if you want to compare it to something, you can kind of compare it to Chernobyl. Like when Chernobyl went off, you wouldn't be able to drive a car or fly a plane right over top of it. The plane would crash, the car would fail. And so you got to think about, going over top of energy like that, but crystal energy in a pyramid structure from Atlantis, even though it has been about 27,000 years. If conditions are right, it can still go wonky with some of our electronics, and you can kind of see remnants of that now. And they didn't go very deep into that, but these are things that I know as well, from other workings I've done. And also, when they talk about, the research group is making their own pyramids in their backyard, and they're trying to get the layout just right. And what's important, and the reason why the pyramids in Egypt aren't really be able to be active anymore, and why they're relics, is because they're no longer aligned with our magnetic field of Earth. Now, something else is also going on that obviously they didn't know about in the early 80s when these recordings are done. But if you Google the magnetic pole shift that's happening right now, it is moving at such an alarming rate. I've been studying the magnetic pole shift for about 10 years, along with the patterns of our sun and what our sun is going through right now. And for me, it's been really interesting because our two poles, our magnetic poles, are actually racing towards each other. And if you play with just magnets in your hand, you try playing with the opposite of the magnets, and you try to put them together or pull them apart. It is, think about our Earth going through that. And so I might do a whole other video on that as well, but they did touch on it a little bit during this video because it's really important when you're aligning the pyramids for some healing work. And they did talk about how the pyramids are really used for not just healing of the bodies, but also reverse the aging and stop aging and heal aging. And that's what, of course, everyone is really interested in, and like, where exactly do you have to be inside the pyramid to get activated for healing energy of aging? And that's one of the things that the pyramids were used for, because during the time of Ra, when the pyramids were built, humanity at the time was only living to an average of 30 years. It was like their bodies just could not handle longevity. And that is not a long time. And it's not a long time just because there's not enough years of expansion within a lifetime to really be able to advance your soul journey, is why it's important to live long enough of a life so you can ascend spiritually and not just, be looking at survival and procreation. There's there's other things besides that we're supposed to have lessons for in third density. And that's one of the things that Ra and the team were trying to overcome with the pyramids. And I'll talk a little bit at the end about some of the really interesting topics that they go into, but let's just get right into it. Here is book 3, part 5 of the Law of One Raw Material.
The Law of One, Book 3, Session 59, June 25, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. Questioner, at the end of the second major cycle there were a few 100,000 people on Earth. There are over 4 billion people on Earth today. Were the over 4 billion people that are incarnate today in the Earth planes and not incarnate at that time, or did they come in from elsewhere during the last 25,000 years? Ra, I am Ra. There were 3 basic divisions of origin of these entities. Firstly, and primarily, those of the planetary sphere you call Maldek, having become able to take up third density once again, were gradually loosed from self-imposed limitations of form. Secondly, there were those of other third density entrants or neophytes whose vibratory patterns matched the Terran experiential nexus. These then filtered in through incarnative processes. Thirdly, in the past approximate 200 of your years you have experienced much visiting of the Wanderers. It may be noted that all possible opportunities for incarnation are being taken at this time due to your harvesting process, and the opportunities which this offers. Questioner, just to clarify that, could you tell me approximately how many mind-body-spirit complexes were transferred to Earth at the beginning of this last 75,000-year period? Ra, I am Ra. The transfer, as you call it, has been gradual. Over 2 billion souls are those of Maldek which have successfully made the transition. Approximately 1.9 billion souls have, from many portions of the creation, entered into this experience at various times. The remainder are those who have experienced the first 2 cycles upon this sphere or who have come in at some point as wanderers, some wanderers having been in this sphere for many thousands of your years, others having come far more recently. Questioner, I'm trying to understand the 3 spirals of light in the pyramid shape. I would like to question on each. The first spiral starts below the Queen's Chamber and ends in the Queen's Chamber? Is that correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect. The first notion of upward spiraling light is as that of the scoop, the light energy being scooped in through the attraction of the pyramid shape through the bottom or base. Thus the first configuration is a semi-spiral. Questioner, would this be similar to the vortex you get when you release water from a bathtub? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct except that in the case of this action the cause is gravitic, whereas in the case of the pyramid the vortex is that of upward spiraling light being attracted by the electromagnetic fields engendered by the shape of the pyramid. Questioner, then the first spiral after the semi-spiral is the spiral used for study and healing. Relative to the Queen's Chamber position, where does this first spiral begin and end? Ra, I am Ra. The spiral which is used for study and healing begins at or slightly below the Queen's Chamber position depending upon your Earth and cosmic rhythms. It moves through the King's Chamber position in a sharply delineated form and ends at the point whereby the top approximate third of the pyramid may be seen to be intensifying the energy. Questioner, the first spiral is obviously different somehow from the second and third spirals since they have different uses and different properties. The second spiral then starts at the end of the first spiral and goes up to the apex. Is that correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is partially correct. The large spiral is drawn into the vortex of the apex of the pyramid. However, some light energy which is of the more intense nature of the red, shall we say, end of the spectrum is spiraled once again, causing an enormous strengthening and focusing of energy which is then of use for building. Questioner, and then the third spiral radiates from the top of the pyramid. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. The third complete spiral does so. This is correct. It is well to reckon with the foundation semi-spiral, which supplies the prana for all that may be affected by the 3 following upward spirals of light. Questioner, now I am trying to understand what happens in this process. I'll call the first semi-spiral 0 position and the other 3 spirals 1, 2, and 3. The first spiral being a study in healing. What change takes place in light from zero position to the first spiral that makes that first spiral available for healing? Ra, I am Ra. The prana scooped in by the pyramid shape gains coherence of energetic direction. The term upward spiraling light is an indication, not of your up and down concept, but an indication of the concept of that which reaches towards the source of love and light. Thus all light or prana is upward spiraling, but its direction, as you understand this term, is unregimented and not useful for work. Questioner. Could I assume then that from all points in space light radiates in our illusion outward in a 360 degrees solid angle, and this scoop shape with the pyramid then creates the coherence to this radiation as a focusing mechanism? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is precisely correct. Questioner. Then the first spiral has a different factor of cohesion, you might say, than the second. What is the difference between this first and second spiral? Ra, I am Ra. As the light is funneled into what you term the zero position, it reaches the point of turning. This acts as a compression of the light, multiplying tremendously its coherence and organization. Questioner. Then is the coherence and organization multiplied once more at the start of the second spiral? Is there just a doubling effect or an increasing effect? Ra, I am Ra. This is difficult to discuss in your language. There is no doubling effect, but a transformation across boundaries of dimension, so that light which was working for those using it in space-time, time-space configuration becomes light working in what you might consider an interdimensional time-space, space-time configuration. This causes an apparent diffusion and weakness of the spiraling energy. However, in position 2, as you have called it, much work may be done interdimensionally. Questioner. In the Giza pyramid there was no chamber at position 2. Do you ever make use of position 2 by putting a chamber in that position on other planets or in other pyramids? Ra, I am Ra. This position is useful only to those whose abilities are such that they are capable of serving as conductors of this type of focused spiral. One would not wish to attempt to train third-density entities in such disciplines. Questioner. Then the third spiral radiating from the top of the pyramid you say is used for energizing. Can you tell me what you mean by energizing? Ra, I am Ra. The third spiral is extremely full of the positive effects of directed prana, and that which is placed over such a shape will receive shocks energizing the electromagnetic fields. This can be most stimulating in third-density applications of mental and bodily configurations. However, if allowed to be in place over long, such shocks may traumatize the entity. Questioner. Are there any other effects of the pyramid shape beside the spirals that we have just discussed? Ra, I am Ra. There are several. However, their uses are limited. The use of the resonating chamber position is one which challenges the ability of an adept to face the self. This is one type of mental test which may be used. It is powerful and quite dangerous. The outer shell of the pyramid shape contains small vortices of light energy which, in the hands of capable crystallized beings, are useful for various subtle workings upon the healing of invisible bodies affecting the physical body. Other of these places are those wherein perfect sleep may be obtained and age reversed. These characteristics are not important. Questioner. What position would be the age reversal position? Ra, I am Ra. Approximately 5 to 10 degrees above and below the Queen's Chamber position in ovoid shapes on each face of the four-sided pyramid, extending into the solid shape approximately 1/4 of the way to the Queen's Chamber position. Questioner. In other words, if I went just inside the wall of the pyramid 1/4 of the way but still remained 3/4 of the way from the center at approximately the level above the base of the Queen's Chamber, I would find that position? Ra, I am Ra. This is approximately so. You must picture the double teardrop extending in both the plane of the pyramid face and in half towards the Queen's Chamber extending above and below it. You may see this as the position where the light has been scooped into the spiral and then is expanding again. This position is what you may call a prana vacuum. Questioner. Why would this reverse aging? Ra, I am Ra. Aging is a function of the effects of various electromagnetic fields upon the electromagnetic fields of the mind-body-spirit complex. In this position, there is no input or disturbance of the fields, nor is any activity within the electromagnetic field complex of the mind-body-spirit complex allowed full sway. The vacuum sucks any such disturbance away. Thus the entity feels nothing and is suspended. Questioner, is the pyramid shape constructed in our yard functioning properly? Is it aligned properly and built properly? Ra, I am Ra. It is built within good tolerances though not perfect. However, its alignment should be as this resting place for maximum efficacy. Questioner, do you mean that one of the base sides should be aligned 20 degrees east of north? Ra, I am Ra. That alignment would be efficacious. Questioner, previously you stated that one of the base sides should be aligned with magnetic north. Which is better, to align with magnetic north or to align with 20 degrees east of magnetic north? Ra, I am Ra. This is at your discretion. The proper alignment for you of this sphere at this time is magnetic north. However, in your query you ask specifically about a structure which has been used by specific entities whose energy vortices are more consonant with the, shall we say, true color green orientation. This would be the 20 degrees east of north. There are advantages to each orientation. The effect is stronger at magnetic north and can be felt more clearly. The energy, though weak, coming from the now distant, but soon to be paramount, direction is more helpful. The choice is yours. It is the choice between quantity and quality or wide band and narrow band aid in meditation. Questioner, when the planetary axis realigns, will it realign 20 degrees east of north to conform to the green vibration? Ra, I am Ra. We fear this shall be the last question as this entity rapidly increases its distortion towards what you call pain of the body complex. There is every indication that this will occur. We cannot speak of certainties, but are aware that the grosser or less dense materials will be pulled into conformation with the denser and lighter energies which give your logos its proceedings through the realms of experience. May we answer any brief queries at this time? Questioner, only if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact. Ra, I am Ra. All is well. We are aware that you experience difficulties at this time, but they are not due to your lack of conscientiousness or dedication. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. The Law of One, Book 3, Session 60, July 1st, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Questioner, when you spoke in the last session of energizing shocks coming from the top of the pyramid, did you mean that these came at intervals rather than steadily? Ra, I am Ra. These energizing shocks come at discrete intervals but come very, very close together in a properly functioning pyramid shape. In one whose dimensions have gone awry, the energy will not be released with regularity or in quanta, as you may perhaps better understand our meaning. Questioner, the next statement that I will make may or may not be enlightening to me in my investigation of the pyramid energy. But it has occurred to me that the effect of the so-called Bermuda Triangle could be possibly due to a large pyramid beneath the water which releases this third spiral in discrete and varying intervals. Entities or craft that are in the vicinity may change their space-time continuum in some way. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. Yes. Questioner, then this third spiral has an energizing effect that, if strong enough, will actually change the space-time continuum. Is there a use or value to this type of change? Ra, I am Ra. In the hands of one of fifth density or above, this particular energy may be tapped in order to communicate information, love, or light across what you would consider vast distances, but which with this energy may be considered transdimensional leaps. Also, there is the possibility of travel using this formation of energy. Questioner, would this travel be the instantaneous type used primarily by sixth density entities, or is it the slingshot effect that you are talking about? Ra, I am Ra. The former effect is that of which we speak. You may note that as one learns the, shall we say, understandings or disciplines of the personality, each of these configurations of prana is available to the entity, without the aid of this shape. One may view the pyramid at Giza as metaphysical training wheels. Questioner. Then is the large underwater pyramid off the Florida coast one of the balancing pyramids that Ra constructed? Or did some other social memory complex construct it, and if so, which one? Ra, I am Ra. That pyramid of which you speak was one whose construction was aided by sixth density entities of a social memory complex, working with Atlanteans prior to our working with the, as you call them, Egyptians. Questioner, you mentioned working with one other group other than the Egyptians. Who were they? Ra, I am Ra. These entities were those of South America. We divided our forces to work within these two cultures. Questioner, the pyramid shape then, as I understand it, was deemed by your social memory complex to be at that time of paramount importance as the physical training aid for spiritual development. At this particular time in the evolution of our planet, it seems that you place little or no emphasis on this shape. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. It is our honor duty to attempt to remove the distortions that the use of this shape has caused in the thinking of your peoples, and in the activities of some of your entities. We do not deny that such shapes are efficacious, nor do we withhold the general gist of this efficacy. However, we wish to offer our understanding, limited though it is, that contrary to our naive beliefs many thousands of years ago the optimum shape for initiation does not exist. Let us expand upon this point. When we were aided by sixth density entities during our own third density experiences, we, being less bellicose in the extreme, found this teaching to be of help. In our naivete in third density, we had not developed the interrelationships of your barter or money system and power. We were, in fact, a more philosophical third density planet than your own, and our choices of polarity were much more centered about the, shall we say, understanding of sexual energy transfers and the appropriate relationships between self and other self. We spent a much larger portion of our space-time working with the unmanifested being. In this less complex atmosphere, it was quite instructive to have this learned teaching device, and we benefited without the distortions we found occurring among your peoples. We have recorded these differences meticulously in the great record of creation that such naivete shall not be necessary again. At this space-time we may best serve you, we believe, by stating that the pyramid for meditation along with other rounded and arched or pointed circular shapes is of help to you. However, it is our observation that due to the complexity of influences upon the unmanifested being at this space-time nexus, among your planetary peoples it is best that the progress of the mind-body-spirit complex take place without, as you call them, training aids, because when using a training aid an entity then takes upon itself the law of responsibility for the quickened or increased rate of learned teaching. If this greater understanding, if we may use this misnomer, is not put into practice in the moment-by-moment experience of the entity, then the usefulness of the training aid becomes negative. Questioner, thank you. I don't know if this question will result in any useful information, but I feel that I must ask it. What was the Ark of the Covenant, and what was its use? Ra, I am Ra. The Ark of the Covenant was that place wherein those things most holy, according to the understanding of the one called Moishi, were placed. The article placed therein has been called by your peoples 2 tablets called the 10 Commandments. There were not 2 tablets. There was one writing and scroll. This was placed along with the most carefully written accounts by various entities of their beliefs concerning the creation by the one Creator. This ark was designed to constitute the place where from the priests, as you call those distorted towards the desire to serve their brothers, could draw their power and feel the presence of the one Creator. However, it is to be noted that this entire arrangement was designed, not by the one known to the Confederation as Yahweh, but rather was designed by negative entities preferring this method of creating an elite called the Sons of Levi. Questioner, was this a device for communication then? You also said that they drew power from it. What sort of power? How did this work? Ra, I am Ra. This was charged by means of the materials with which it was built being given an electromagnetic field. It became an object of power in this way and, to those whose faith became that untarnished by unrighteousness or separation, this power designed for negativity became positive and is so, to those truly in harmony with the experience of service, to this day. Thus the negative forces were partially successful, but the positively oriented Moishi, as this entity was called, gave to your planetary peoples the possibility of a path to the one infinite creator, which is completely positive. This is in common with each of your orthodox religious systems, which have all become somewhat mixed in orientation, yet offer a pure path to the one creator, which is seen by the pure seeker. Questioner, where is the Ark of the Covenant now? Where is it located? Ra, I am Ra. We refrain from answering this query due to the fact that it does still exist and is not that which we would infringe upon your peoples by locating. Questioner, in trying to understand the creative energies, it has occurred to me that I really do not understand why unusable heat is generated as our Earth moves from third into fourth density. I know it has to do with disharmony between the vibrations of third and fourth density, but why this would show up as a physical heating within the Earth is beyond me. Can you enlighten me on that? Ra, I am Ra. The concepts are somewhat difficult to penetrate in your language. However, we shall attempt to speak to the subject. If an entity is not in harmony with its circumstances, it feels a burning within. The temperature of the physical vehicle does not yet rise, only the heat of the temper or the tears, as we may describe this disharmony. However, if an entity persists for a long period of your spacetime in feeling this emotive heat and disharmony, the entire body complex will begin to resonate to this disharmony, and the disharmony will then show up as the cancer or other degenerative distortions from what you call health. When an entire planetary system of peoples and cultures repeatedly experiences disharmony on a great scale, the Earth, under the feet of these entities, shall begin to resonate with this disharmony. Due to the nature of the physical vehicle, disharmony shows up as a blockage of growth or an uncontrolled growth, since the primary function of a mind-body-spirit complexes. Bodily complex is growth and maintenance. In the case of your planet, the purpose of the planet is the maintenance of orbit and the proper location or orientation with regards to other cosmic influences. In order to have this occurring properly, the interior of your sphere is hot in your physical terms. Thus, instead of uncontrolled growth, you begin to experience uncontrolled heat and its expansive consequences. Questioner, is the Earth solid all the way through from one side to the other? Ra, I am Ra. You may say that your sphere is of an honeycomb nature. The center is, however, solid if you would so call that which is molten. Questioner, are there third density entities living in the honeycomb areas? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This was at one time correct. This is not correct at this present space-time. Questioner, are there any inner civilizations or entities living in these areas other than physically incarnate who do come and materialize on the Earth's surface at some times? Ra, I am Ra. As we have noted, there are some which do as you say. Further, there are some inner plane entities of this planet which prefer to do some materialization into third density visible in these areas. There are also bases, shall we say, in these areas of those from elsewhere, both positive and negative. There are abandoned cities. Questioner, what are these bases used for by those from elsewhere? Ra, I am Ra. These bases are used for the work of materialization of needed equipment for communication with third density entities, and for resting places for some equipment which you might call small craft. These are used for surveillance when it is requested by entities. Thus some of the, shall we say, teachers of the Confederation speak partially through these surveillance instruments along computerized lines, and when information is desired and those requesting it are of the proper vibratory level, the Confederation entity itself will then speak. Questioner, I understand then that the Confederation entity needs communication equipment and craft to communicate with the third density incarnate entity requesting the information? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect. However, many of your peoples request the same basic information in enormous repetition, and for a social memory complex to speak ad infinitum about the need to meditate is a waste of the considerable abilities of such social memory complexes. Thus some entities have had approved by the Council of Saturn the placement and maintenance of these message givers for those whose needs are simple, thus reserving the abilities of the Confederation members for those already meditating and absorbing information, which are then ready for additional information. Questioner, there has been, for the past 30 years, a lot of information and a lot of confusion, and in fact, I would say that the law of confusion has been working overtime to make a small joke in bringing information for spiritual catalysis to groups requesting it. and we know that both the positively and the negatively oriented social memory complexes have been adding to this information, as they can. This has led to a condition of apathy in a lot of cases with respect to the information. Many who are truly seeking have been thwarted by what I might call spiritual entropy in this information. Can you comment on this and the mechanisms of alleviating these problems? Ra, I am Ra. We can comment on this. Questioner, only if you deem it of importance would I request a comment. If you deem it of no importance, we'll skip it. Ra, I am Ra. This information is significant to some degree as it bears upon our own mission at this time. We of the Confederation are at the call of those upon your planet. If the call, though sincere, is fairly low in consciousness of the, shall we say, system whereby spiritual evolution may be precipitated, then we may only offer that information useful to that particular caller. This is the basic difficulty. Entities receive the basic information about the original thought and the means, that is meditation and service to others, whereby this original thought may be obtained. Please note that as Confederation members, we are speaking for positively oriented entities. We believe the Orion group has precisely the same difficulty. Once this basic information is received, it is not put into practice in the heart and in the life experience, but instead rattles about within the mind complex distortions as would a building block which has lost its place and simply rolls from side to side uselessly, yet still the entity calls. Therefore, the same basic information is repeated. Ultimately, the entity decides that it is weary of this repetitive information. However, if an entity puts into practice that which it is given, it will not find repetition except when needed. Questioner, thank you. Are the chakras or bodily energy centers related to, or do they operate like the pyramid energy funnel? Ra, I am Ra. No. Questioner, was there a purpose for mummification having to do with anything other than bodily burial? Ra, I am Ra. Much as we would like to speak to you of this distortion of our designs in constructing the pyramid, we can say very little, for the intent was quite mixed and the uses, though many felt them to be positive, were of a non-positive order of generation. We cannot speak upon this subject without infringement upon some basic energy balances between the positive and negative forces upon your planet. It may be said that those offering themselves felt they were offering themselves in service to others. Questioner, what civilization was it that helped Ra using the pyramid shape while Ra was in third density? Ra, I am Ra. Your people have a fondness for the naming. These entities have begun their travel back to the Creator and are no longer experiencing time. Questioner, the instrument wished to know, when using the pendulum in discovering energy centers, what the back and forth motion meant instead of the circular motion. Ra, I am Ra. This shall have to be the final question, although this entity is still providing us with energy. It is experiencing the distortion towards pain. The rotations having been discussed, we shall simply say that the weak back and forth motion indicates a partial blockage, although not a complete blockage. The strong back and forth motion indicates the reverse of blockage, which is overstimulation of a chakra or energy center, which is occurring in order to attempt to balance some difficulty in body or mind complex activity. This condition is not helpful to the entity as it is unbalanced. Are there any brief queries before we leave this instrument? Questioner, only is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Ra, I am Ra. Be merry, my friends. All is well and your conscientiousness is to be recommended. We leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Rejoice, then, and go forth in the peace and in the glory of the one infinite Creator. I am Ra. Adonai. The Law of One, Book 3, Session 61, July 8, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you, my friends, in the love and in the light of the infinite Creator. We communicate now. Questioner, could you give me an indication of the instrument's condition? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument's vital energies are improving. The physical complex distortions are quite marked at this spacetime, and there is a decrease in physical complex energies. Questioner, is there anything in particular that the instrument could do to improve the physical condition? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument has two factors affecting its bodily distortions. This is in common with all those which by seniority of vibration have reached the green ray level of vibratory consciousness complexes. The first is the given in streamings, which vary from cycle to cycle in predictable manner. In this particular entity, the cyclical complexes at this space-time nexus are not favorable for the physical energy levels. The second ramification of condition is that which we might call the degree of mental efficiency in use of catalyst, provided for the learning of programmed lessons in particular and the lessons of love in general. This instrument, unlike some entities, has some further distortion due to the use of pre-incarnative conditions. Questioner, can you expand on what you meant by the cycling in streamings of energy? Ra, I am Ra. There are 4 types of cycles, which are those given in the moment of entry into incarnation. There are in addition more cosmic and less regularized inpourings which, from time to time, affect a sensitized mind-body-spirit complex. The 4 rhythms are, to some extent, known among your peoples and are called biorhythms. There is a 4th cycle which we may call the cycle of gateway of magic of the adept or of the spirit. This is a cycle which is completed in approximately 18 of your diurnal cycles. The cosmic patterns are also a function of the moment of incarnative entrance and have to do with your satellite you call the moon, your planets, of this galaxy, the galactic sun, and in some cases the instreamings from the major galactic points of energy flow. Questioner, would it be helpful to plot these cycles for the instrument and attempt to have these sessions at the most favorable points with respect to the cycles? Ra, I am Ra. To that specific query we have no response. It may be noted that the 3 in this triad bring in this energy pattern which is Ra. Thus each energy input of the triad is of note. We may say that while these information systems are interesting, they are in sway only in so far as the entity or entities involved have not made totally efficient use of catalyst and, therefore, instead of accepting the, shall we say, negative or retrograde moments or periods without undue notice, have the distortion towards the retaining of these distortions in order to work out the unused catalyst. It is to be noted that psychic attack continues upon this entity although it is only effective at this time in physical distortions towards discomfort. We may suggest that it is always of some interest to observe the roadmap, both of the cycles and of the planetary and other cosmic influences, in that one may see certain wide roads or possibilities. However, we remind that this group is in unit. Questioner, is there some way that we could, as a unit then, do something to reduce the effect of the psychic attack on the instrument and optimize the communicative opportunity? Ra, I am Ra. We have given you the information concerning that which aids this particular mind-body-spirit complex. We can speak no further. It is our opinion, which we humbly offer, that each is in remarkable harmony with each for this particular third density illusion at this space-time nexus. Questioner, I would like to ask questions about healing exercises. The first is, in the healing exercises concerning the body, what do you mean by the disciplines of the body having to do with the balance between love and wisdom in the use of the body, in its natural functions? Ra, I am Ra. We shall speak more briefly than usual due to this instrument's use of the transferred energy. We, therefore, request further queries if our reply is not sufficient. The body complex has natural functions. Many of these have to do with the unmanifested self and are normally not subject to the need for balancing. There are natural functions which have to do with other self. Among these are touching, loving, the sexual life, and those times when the company of another is craved to combat the type of loneliness which is the natural function of the body, as opposed to those types of loneliness which are of the mind-emotion complex or of the spirit. When these natural functions may be observed in the daily life, they may be examined in order that the love of self and love of other self, versus the wisdom regarding the use of natural functions, may be observed. There are many fantasies and stray thoughts which may be examined in most of your peoples in this balancing process. Equally to be balanced is the withdrawal from the need for these natural functions with regard to other self. On the one hand, there is an excess of love. It must be determined whether this is love of self or other self or both. On the other hand, there is an overbalance towards wisdom. It is well to know the body complex so that it is an ally, balanced and ready to be clearly used as a tool. For each bodily function may be used in higher and higher, if you will, complexes of energy with other self. No matter what the behavior, the important balancing is the understanding of each interaction on this level with other selves, so that whether the balance may be love wisdom or wisdom love, the other self is seen by the self in a balanced configuration, and the self is thus freed for further work. Questioner, then the second question is, could you give an example of how feelings affect portions of the body and the sensations of the body? Ra, I am Ra. It is nearly impossible to speak generally of these mechanisms, for each entity of proper seniority has its own programming. Of the less aware entities, we may say that the connection will often seem random as the higher self continues producing catalyst, until a bias occurs. In each programmed individual, the sensitivities are far more active and, as we have said, that catalyst not used fully by the mind and spirit is given to the body. Thus you may see in this entity the numbing of the arms and the hands, signifying this entity's failure to surrender to the loss of control over the life. Thus this drama is enacted in the physical distortion complex. In the questioner, we may see the desire not to be carrying the load it carries given as physical manifestation of the soreness of those muscles for carrying used. That which is truly needed to be carried is a pre-incarnative responsibility which seems highly inconvenient. In the case of the scribe, we see a weariness and numbness of feelings ensuing from lack of using catalyst designed to sensitize this entity to quite significant influxes of unfamiliar distortion complexes of the mental, emotional, and spiritual level. As the numbness removes itself from the higher or more responsive complexes, the bodily complex distortions will vanish. This is true also of the other examples. We would note at this time that the totally efficient use of catalyst upon your plane is extremely rare. Questioner, could you tell me how you are able to give us information like this with respect to the first distortion or law of confusion? Ra, I am Ra. Each of those is already aware of this information. Any other reader may extract the heart of meaning from this discussion without interest as to the example's sources. If each was not fully aware of these answers, we could not speak. It is interesting that in many of your queries you ask for confirmation rather information. This is acceptable to us. Questioner, this brings out the point of the purpose of the physical incarnation, I believe. And that is to reach a conviction through your own thought processes as to a solution to problems and understandings in a totally free situation, with no proof at all or anything that you would consider proof, proof being a very poor word in itself. Can you expand on my concept? Ra, I am Ra. Your opinion is an eloquent one, although somewhat confused in its connections between the freedom expressed by subjective knowing and the freedom expressed by subjective acceptance. There is a significant distinction between the two. This is not a dimension of knowing, even subjectively, due to the lack of overview of cosmic and other inpourings which affect each and every situation which produces catalyst. The subjective acceptance of that which is at the moment and the finding of love within that moment is the greater freedom. That known as the subjective knowing without proof is, in some degree, a poor friend, for there will be anomalies no matter how much information is garnered due to the distortions which form third density. Questioner, the third question that I have here is, could you give examples of bodily polarity? Ra, I am Ra. Within the body there are many polarities which relate to the balancing of the energy centers of the various bodies, of the unmanifested entity. It is well to explore these polarities for work and healing. Each entity is, of course, a potential polarized portion of an other self. Questioner, the last question here says that it would seem the proper balancing exercises for all the sensations of the body would be some sort of inactivity such as meditation or contemplation. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is largely incorrect. The balancing requires a meditative state in order for the work to be done. However, the balancing of sensation has to do with an analysis of the sensation with a special respect to any unbalanced leaning between the love and the wisdom or the positive and the negative. Then whatever is lacking in the balanced sensation is, as in all balancing, allowed to come into the being after the sensation is remembered and recalled in such detail as to overwhelm the senses. Questioner, could you tell me why it is important for the appurtenances and other things to be so carefully aligned with respect to the instrument, and why just a small ruffle in the sheet by the instrument causes a problem with the reception of Ra? Ra, I am Ra. We may attempt an explanation. This contact is narrowband. The instrument is highly sensitive. Thus we have good entry into it and can use it to an increasingly satisfactory level. However, the trance condition is, shall we say, not one which is without toll upon this instrument. Therefore, the area above the entrance into the physical complex of this instrument must be kept clear to avoid discomfort, to the instrument especially as it re-enters the body complex. The appurtenances give to the instrument's sensory input mental visualizations which aid in the trance beginning. The careful alignment of these is important for the energizing group in that it is a reminder to that support group that it is time for a working. The ritualistic behaviors are triggers for many energies of the support group. You may have noticed more energy being used in workings as the number has increased due to the long-term, shall we say, effect of such ritualistic actions. This would not aid another group as it was designed for this particular system of mind-body-spirit complexes and especially the instrument. There is enough energy transferred for one more long query. We do not wish to deplete this instrument. Questioner, then I will ask this question. Could you tell us the purpose of the frontal lobes of the brain and the conditions necessary for their activation? Ra, I am Ra. The frontal lobes of the brain will, shall we say, have much more use in fourth density. The primary mental emotive condition of this large area of the so-called brain is joy or love in its creative sense. Thus the energies which we have discussed in relationship to the pyramids, all of the healing, the learning, the building, and the energizing are to be found in this area. This is the area tapped by the adept. This is the area which, working through the trunk and root of mind, makes contact with intelligent energy and through this gateway, intelligent infinity. Are there any queries before we leave this instrument? Questioner, only is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument is somewhat distorted but each is doing well. You are conscientious. We thank you for continuing to observe the alignments and request that on each level you continue to be this fastidious as this will maintain the contact. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, my friends, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.
Okay, that was a little bit of a long, session because I managed to put 3 in 1 for this time. Isn't it funny how we all know about the hollow earth theory, and what's, the inner earth really look like? Because we know that there's been civilizations that are in the inner earth, all the ancient tales are full of it. And Ra does confirm that it's like a honeycomb. And there's been some people out there that are, that put together images of what the inner earth would look like. Like there's huge caverns. Like you can fly a jet within them. The earth is not solid all the way through. And so there's entire cities in our inner earth. And Ross says for the most part they're abandoned, but they do get occupied, when some entities are passing through, you could say, our galaxy. So that's we'll get into that too later. I just don't want to give you guys I don't want to spoil any big surprises that are coming up in the next sessions, and it's really hard to hang on to it, but I want you guys to kind of enjoy the journey. So I hope you enjoyed this session, and I will see you in part 6.